You are in the middle of a deposition when your phone vibrates for the 7th time. You silence it the same way you silence everything that threatens to pull focus, quickly, without apology. You are 34 years old, junior partner at Brennan & Locke, and you have spent the last 6 years learning that the law is not about justice. It is about precision. About knowing exactly which words to say and which to bury, and about never letting the other side see you calculate. The deponent across the table is a mid-level insurance executive caught in a fraudulent claim scheme, and you are leading him step by step through a series of questions he thinks are about one thing and are actually about another. You are good at this. You are, your supervising partner once told you, the best he has ever seen at making complicated problems disappear without anyone knowing they were problems at all. When the deposition ends, you check your messages. There are 9 missed calls, all from a number you do not recognize, and 1 voicemail. The voicemail is 11 seconds long. It is your brother's voice, and he sounds like a man who has already accepted what is about to happen to him. He says the name Orsini. He says he owes them $400,000. He says they have his daughter, your niece, 8 years old, who you coached through her first soccer season last spring, and that you have until 6 o'clock to reach a man named Carmine, whose number your brother then recites in the flat, careful way of someone being watched while they speak. He says, "I'm sorry." Then the recording ends. It is 4:22 in the afternoon. You sit in the parking garage for 3 minutes. Not because you are paralyzed, because you are thinking, and thinking requires stillness. You understand in those 3 minutes several things simultaneously. That your brother borrowed money from the Orsini family through a gambling debt he hid from everyone. That the $400,000 is not a number you can produce in 98 minutes through any legitimate means. And that calling the police would result in one of 2 outcomes, both of which end with your niece in a body bag. You have read enough case law involving organized crime to know that law enforcement involvement in active hostage situations controlled by families with institutional corruption reach, and the Orsinis are precisely that kind of family, is a death sentence for the hostage. You know this. You are a lawyer. Knowing things is what you do. You call Carmine. You negotiate, not for time, but for language. You tell him you are not a man who makes promises he cannot keep, and that the $400,000 is not something you can produce, but that you are someone who can be useful in a way that money is not. There is a pause on the line long enough that you wonder if you have miscalculated entirely. Then Carmine says, "Come to dinner." Dinner is a restaurant in the kind of neighborhood where the tables never have numbers, because everyone who eats there is already known. You walk in wearing the same suit you wore to the deposition. You are seated across from a man named Enzo Orsini, 71, who looks less like a crime boss than like a retired civil engineer. He has small hands, a careful posture, and he eats his pasta with the deliberate attention of someone who has learned that pleasure requires patience. He does not mention your niece. He talks about the problem of loyalty, about how difficult it has become to find people who understand the difference between silence and discretion, between following orders and solving problems. He talks about all of this the way a man talks about the weather, as background, as context, as the air the real conversation breathes in. Then he looks at you directly for the first time since you sat down, and he says, "I have an attorney. What I don't have is someone who thinks the way you think. Your niece comes home tonight. You start Monday." It is not a threat exactly. It is also not a threat. You understand the sentence perfectly in all of its dimensions. You say, "I'll need to know the scope." He says everything. You say, "I'll need authority to act without delay in time-sensitive situations." He says, "You'll have it." You shake hands. The pasta you notice distantly is excellent. That was 11 years ago. The scope, as it turns out, is approximately the size of a small country. The Orsini family operates across 14 U.S. cities and maintains financial relationships on 3 continents. Their legitimate holdings, construction, hospitality, private equity, generate enough revenue to serve as functional cover for operations that you are never asked to document. Your job, which no one ever writes down, and no one ever says aloud in any room where a recording device might plausibly exist, is to make problems go away. Not to create the problems, not to authorize them, and not to profit from their underlying cause. Your job is the space between the event and the consequence, the gap between what happened and what the record shows. In the first year, the problems are mostly legal. A city inspector is threatening to hold up a construction permit over what he describes as code violations and what is actually a negotiation about price. You meet him at a coffee shop with a folder of documentation showing that the violations he has cited do not exist under the specific municipal code he has referenced, and that pursuing the matter further would result in a public records request that would surface his own department's approvals of 3 buildings with far more substantive issues. He signs the permit within a week. You have not paid anyone. You have not threatened anyone. You have simply arranged the information in the room until the math became obvious to everyone present. This is what you do. This is what you are good at. By the second year, the problems are more varied. A federal prosecutor in Pittsburgh is building a case that has nothing to do with the Orsinis directly, but has the shape of something that could become connected through a single cooperating witness who owes a mid-tier Orsini associate a favor from 2009. The witness is not in danger. You make that clear, internally, as a condition of your involvement, and Enzo, to his credit, honors it. But the witness's incentives need to be restructured. You spend 6 weeks mapping the federal case's visible contours, talking to 3 separate defense attorneys under the cover of a hypothetical consulting arrangement, and identifying the single evidentiary gap that, if exploited correctly, would make the witness's cooperation insufficient to sustain an indictment. You write a 12-page memo that will never exist in any filing system and deliver it verbally to the attorney the witness has retained. The indictment does not come. The prosecutor moves on to other cases. You have touched nothing. You have left no mark. You are becoming very good at invisibility. The moral arithmetic of the first 2 years is uncomfortable but manageable. You are not getting anyone killed. You are not moving drugs or weapons or anything that leaves bodies. You are a very sophisticated obstacle removal system operating within, and occasionally just outside, the boundaries of what the law can prove. You tell yourself this at night, in the specific way that people tell themselves things they need to keep functional. You also know that the system you are serving is not clean, that the construction company whose permits you protect uses labor arrangements that exploit undocumented workers, that the hospitality portfolio launders cash at a scale that warps local real estate markets. You know all of this. You file it in the part of your mind where you keep things you understand but cannot change, and you go back to work. In year 4, a man named Delgado, a rival family's enforcer, mid-rank, ambitious, begins moving on Orsini-adjacent territory in South Florida. The issue is not violence at first. It is information. Delgado has cultivated a relationship with a journalist at a regional newspaper